please.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're all having a great time at TechCrunch Disrupt Berlin. Mike Butcher from TechCrunch, editor-at-large. Just Google what the hell that means, and then you'll find out. So one of the things we're going to be doing right now is talking about opening up VC and talking about trying to get VC and investors thinking out of the box, to use that old hackneyed phrase. But first of all, let's just introduce Ada Ventures, which is a brand new VC fund coming out of the UK. And I believe you've got some breaking news. Let's deal with that first.
Yeah, we are announcing today, exclusively with TechCrunch Disrupt, that we have raised a $34 million fund to invest in overlooked founders and overlooked markets.
Fantastic. I think that deserves a round of applause. It's great to see some breaking news on the stage. That's coming out. And what's the sort of like the skinny, Matt, what's the skinny about what you're actually going to do with this?
Yeah, we are a very early stage strategy. So we're investing in UK companies right at their earliest kind of inception, once they've built a product of some kind. It could be very early, it can be an MVP, a beta stage product, but that's the point in which we're investing. So it's technically a pre-Series A fund, but the gap in the market, certainly in our home market of the UK, is very, very early. So, post-accelerator, you could think about that as the sweet spot. We're only investing in opportunities that are kind of global in their ambition scale. So we want businesses that can have an impact at a sort of global scale. And we are, as Chex mentioned, we've got to focus on trying to find talent in places where other investors may not be looking.
Right. So lovely. It's named after Ada Lovelace, right? Who was famously the first computer programmer with Charles Babbage, which is, so that's a nice sort of touch. But there seems to be some you've got a lot of weight behind this. You've got TransferWise co-founder Tarvit Henkris. You've got Supercell's co-founders on board as well. Backstage Capital's Arlen Hamilton. What do you think made these people want to be involved?
Yeah, I think that we were really lucky to find people like that who absolutely resonated with the mission. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to figure out that venture capital at the moment is not working for everybody. So, 89p in every pound invested in the UK in 2017 went to all male founding teams. 72% of capital was invested in London. Very little capital is going to people who don't fit that demographic. And we want to do something different with Ada. Ada Lovelace herself was this amazing visionary woman. She was born in 1815, and she kind of predicted the future of computing, but she was completely overlooked. And we believe there are other people like Ada out there today who are just there waiting to be found. And the fund is designed to surface and find and support those people.
So you're going after, I think it's interesting to just specifically mention that you're going after people who are aging populations, women, young people under 20, health, and then you're going after sectors like healthcare, consumer, the future of work. I mean, why do you think, in particular, that you're going to find some, diamonds in the rough? Is it something to do with like identifying problems?
I think that we've tried to look at it from the top level, as you're referring to, about sectors around where are very, very large markets that are not being looked at by a relatively homogenous investment class.
Yeah.
But more granular than that, we've built a unique scouting network. So we have 40 scouts as part of Ada Ventures, which is thrilling to us. And they are all representatives of communities within technology and entrepreneurialism. And they will bring the best deals from those communities to Ada Ventures. And they are diverse in nature. They are geographically diverse. They're not all just in London, for example.
But what does a scout look like? I mean, you're talking about people at universities, or what is it?
Could be. It's often people who self-organize around different sort of focus groups. So, for example, Islamic Makers is a group of Muslims in tech. There's 800 members in London. And they work with us and surface companies from that community. And we have kind of first look at that.
Muslimic makers?
Islamic makers, yeah.
What is that?
It's a meetup group. They meet up on a monthly basis. A lot of them work in tech, and some of them are future founders. And we believe that that's where the future kind of aiders may come from. But also lots of other communities like that. There are literally hundreds and thousands even around the country that we think we can work with.
But how are you going to incentivize scouts from these diverse communities to feed into your network?
So we have two types of incentivization. Financial incentivization. I think before that, there's access to a venture capital firm. We are their venture capital firm. But then there's financial alignment. Firstly, there's a finder's fee. If they bring a deal from their network, we'll pay them a cash finder's fee, which can be taken in cash. It can be reinvested in the company alongside us as an angel investor. It can be reinvested in their network. And probably most importantly, there's a share of the long-term incentive, the share of the carried interest that relates to that investment. If that investment performs and the fund is paying carry, they'll get remunerated, just like we do.
And also, just kind of adding to that, I think your previous question about why is it that we're going to be able to find these companies, I think at the moment, so much of venture access is driven by who you know and what your network is, because you need to have a warm introduction to get into the fund. If you don't have that, then where do you even start? And so, on a really simple level, the fact that we are accessible, our email addresses are on our website, you can apply online, we will look at everything, as well as this Scout network, is going to help us find those people.
Previously, generally speaking, let's face it, the warm introduction is between one educated white male and another educated white male, and I suppose that's what you're trying to disrupt, basically.
Yeah, and I think, also in the angel community in the UK is, 91% male, 93% white, and average age of 52. So the angels are often the gatekeepers to the VCs, and they are the ones that have those warm introductions. And so again, that's something that we're trying to disrupt.
If I was someone looking at this more skeptically, I mean, why would there be real sort of value in investing in, to use a sort of broad phrase, diversity? Because ultimately there are problems out there. There's in terms of, say, solving problems of, say, enterprise solutions or mobility, autonomy, AI, etc. I mean, in tech, we're pretty aware of this. What is this special sauce that, thinking about it from the prism of diversity, that is going to bring something that's really, that could be game-changing, that could be another billion-dollar company?
I think it's really important to state that Ada Ventures is open to investing in anybody. You could be a straight white male with a computer science degree from a top university. If you're the best person to build that business, we're going to invest in you.
But is that business going to have to be an impact-led business, or is it going to have to hit certain criteria for you?
Yeah, we're looking for underserved markets, as you referred to earlier, right? So that straight white male from computer science degree X will, for it to be an Ada Ventures company, be building a technology solution to impact the world.
So banking the unbanked or something.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The world's full of, we've been hearing a lot today about the global level problems that exist in the world today. We all in this room particularly know about the force that tech can be in providing solutions to those problems. That's what Ada Ventures is trying to do as well.
Yeah, and I think there are so many solutions that are solving some of the most obvious problems, like how many food delivery startups are there out there, how many cab calling companies are there out there, but there are huge swathes of issues that just haven't been tackled by tech. So, for example, childcare, is a market that we're really interested in because it isn't, there's not many solutions that are trying to address that problem.
Do you think the size of the fund makes a difference, or more of the attitude, the investment attitude or posture?
I think, someone sensibly said your fund size is your investment strategy, and I think our fund size is because we've identified that gap, particularly in the UK market of, call it pre-seed, like the nomenclature is getting unhelpful now, but in that very early, like pre-traction, let's call it, stage, I think that our fund size with significant reserves is absolutely the right fund size to deploy that strategy. But then you get into what happens after that. And that's why we are blessed to have some of the big funds investing in our funds, so we're very close with them. We know that community very well. We're there to help the entrepreneurs we back with that community, which is a big part of which is a big risk here as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'd like to know, how did you sell this into, say, big partners when you were talking to potential bigger funds who don't necessarily have these optics? How did you sell it to them? Did you say, we're going to find people that you'll never find, or what was their reaction?
Yeah, I think thematically they bought into the idea that the world is changing very rapidly. There are these Gen Z and millennials who are looking for different things, and there are these new kind of markets that Ada is going to be able to be at the front end of identifying, and they wanted to sort of see through our eyes in that sense. But secondly, I think a lot of conversation has been happening about how those bigger funds can access more diverse pools of talent. And one way that they can do that is through investing in a fund like ours. And we really hope that Ada is not the only fund that pursues this strategy. We hope that we're just the start, and there's many others that follow us.
You were both at Downing Ventures, I believe, earlier, prior to this new fund. What made you decide that you couldn't do that inside the VC that you were in before? Why would you not say, let's spin out an early stage segment of the fund to do what you want to do there? Why did you not do that? Why did you feel you needed to launch a brand new brand, a brand new fund, a brand new team?
I think that Downing's a great business. It's a large asset management business. I think what we're doing could be seen in that context pretty niche, could be. And so we felt this had to be independent, had to live on its own, and that's the simple answer to that.
And what would you
I think
answer to that?
We see a huge opportunity in building a brand around Ada, and a story around being the first fund in Europe that is truly focusing on overlooked founders and markets. And we wanted to do that really well. We wanted to do that independently, and it's quite difficult to do that within an existing brand.
Have your own ship, basically, I suppose. What do you think, though, that how are you going to measure your success? If we were going to do this panel in a couple of years, maybe let's give you a couple of years rather than a whole year, which is to change, fix all the world's problems. But in a couple of years' time, what will be your sort of measure of success? How are you going to benchmark, your success?
I think the main benchmark of success, obviously in a business like ours, is cash on cash multiple of the fund, which we won't be anywhere near in your 2-year time frame, but that's what we're aiming for. That's our North Star. We think that by having more input in the top of the funnel through our scouting network, we've got a better system, we're seeing more, and therefore, we should be a top return generating fund. How we get there and how we can measure that in 2 years is the most diverse deal flow in Europe is a kind of metric KPI that we measure ourselves against. How many deals have we done that came through our exclusive scouting network? Currently that's running about 20%. We've already funded 2 deals through our scout network. And so does that maintain? Do we grow the network? And can we even increase that percentage so that a higher percentage of the deals that we fund come through this exclusive group that we've built?
I also think, getting some of the biggest names in the industry to invest in the companies that we find and we surface will be an amazing mark of success, and seeing that this strategy hasn't just impacted our fund in our little corner, but actually has kind of broken out and changed the whole way that European venture
So we're already getting a kind of a sense of the kind of where you're coming from, because you have been doing a little bit of investing prior to the announcement of this new fund. You've invested in something called Polycock, which is a
Polypop.
Sorry?
Polypop.
Polypop, sorry. I apologize for my mispronunciation. Polypop. So it's a dissolvable sanitary pad which you can flush down the toilet. I think we were not supposed to be flushing things down the loo anymore, or I don't know what's going on with the environment. But
you can flush this one.
You can flush this one, but
yeah.
I mean, tell us what it is first of all, but then tell us why you think that sort of meets your kind of criteria for
definitely.
Certainly the diversity, etc.
First of all, that's a company that came through the scouting network, so it's a great example of what we're talking about. But it's very much an Ada company because it is solving a huge problem for a large part of the world's population that really hasn't had any innovation, done to it. There's been almost no change in the way that sanitary pads look or what the materials are made out of for the last 30 years.
Yeah.
So this team is a male-female team, and they've come up with this patented solution, which is for pads which can be completely dissolved and flushed. The average number of plastic bags in a single sanitary pad is 6 at the moment. So if you think about how much waste that generates, not just in the UK, but globally, this is the kind of solution that could be hugely impactful for the climate crisis and could generate phenomenal returns for our fund.
And I think one last thing I'd add to that is that we invested in that company around the time when there were a lot of subscription tampon businesses and things like that, a much better D2C experience. But Polypop's got IP behind the materials that Czech's describing, and that's also something that we look for. We look for something that's super defensible like that, which is important with that business.
Well, there must be some interesting stories that you're also sort of coming across, aren't you? Because you're basically trying to reach into areas that VCs generally haven't reached into. You've got to come in with a PhD or a degree or an MBA. You've got to walk in the door with all of these letters behind your name, and you're saying to some kid on a council estate or projects in the back of beyond, you too can be an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
But are you seeing some interesting stories come through the pipe? Are you having those conversations with people who've never thought they might actually do something in this area?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, probably the most thrilling thing about this journey that we've been on recently is the reaction from founders, non-traditional founders that the tech industry has, as a whole, has not necessarily funded in the way that it might have done. That's been really thrilling to us because they've just been with open arms, excited about it, can't wait for this day. They've been waiting for this day as long as we have, and that's been amazing because that's at its heart what Ada Ventures is about. It's about access. It's about inclusive capital. It's we will go out to those places and tell you about venture capital. We all talk in nomenclature and buzzwords. It doesn't make any sense to a lot of people. So Ada Ventures is definitely on a mission to try to demystify, but also to reach out and say, yeah, whoever you are, if you've got a globally significant tech idea that can change the world, we are the fund for you.
Yeah, I also think it's important to say that we're also not best placed to understand certain problems that are experienced by certain communities because we just aren't those communities. So we're really cognizant of that and wanting to make sure that we bring in as many people as possible with as many diverse perspectives as possible to ensure that we can properly diligence and properly understand some of the challenges that these entrepreneurs are trying to solve.
I mean, so finally, I mean, if you had a message to give to founders that perhaps might be listening, watching this video, or in the audience, what would be the sort of message you would want to leave behind in terms of, the kinds of things that you really particularly interested in really addressing, certainly in at the beginning of next year, first quarter next year?
I would start with be bold. Be as bold as you can possibly dare to be. Dream big. That's what we want to see more of in Europe. A lot of us spent a lot of time in the Valley and, the birthplace of some of that global ambition. Well, now it's potentially the time of Europe to deliver on some of that promise. And we certainly believe that. It's one of the founding principles of Ada and why it's based here. And that's what my message to those founders would be. Be as bold as you dare and then go further.
The second thing I think is just because something is not out there or hasn't been funded that looks like what you're doing or who you are, it doesn't mean that what you're doing and who you are isn't going to be incredible. So don't be put off by just looking at what's out there and thinking, I don't see anyone that looks like me, because we need people now who do look different and who are solving completely different problems. There are such big problems still to be solved. The climate crisis is one, politics is another, childcare is another, fertility. There are just these huge areas that we would love to see more founders tackling. Right,
I see. Well, let's set up a challenge and try and see where you are at in a next year or the year after, and be interesting to see what happens, because certainly I think it does feel like a good time to be going after this kind of subject, certainly in the state of the world that we are in at the moment. But for now, Matt and Czech, which you tend to go by that name, I think. Thank you very much for unpacking Ada Ventures for us.
Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you. See you later.
Cheers.